You're listening to Contesting Wrestling Minisode. The number that this Minisode
14.
is 14 is what I was going to say, and then Ben interrupted me.
I'm interrupting too.
Yeah, damn it. This is our Royal Rumble.
Stop interrupting Evan. He's trying to do an introduction. I've been saying we got to get these introductions tighter, and y'all are interrupting Evan. Sorry, Evan.
I feel like
Go on.
Hey.
I feel like one
that
of those,
was mean to interrupt him again.
I feel like one of those guys who was doing a string of cool moves in the Royal Rumble, and then suddenly the aerobics instructor character guy runs in and distracts everybody.
Good old Simon Dean.
Simon Dean.
Yes.
He was great. I mean, Nova was great. Simon Dean was just like a shitty gimmick, but Nova was great.
This is coming out Friday, and when is the Royal Rumble? Sunday.
Kids' seats are just $10. No, they're not.
No, they're probably not.
One thing before we get into Rumble stuff, referencing our last minisode talking about the TNA stuff, I just wanted to mention one of our listeners, Zach, good friend Zach, up in the northern part of New York State.
His address is 1427 Willow Drive.
Buffalo, New York. What's the zip code again?
His work schedule. He's usually at work on Tuesdays, so if you'd like to break into his house.
All right.
He likes hiking in the
Zach,
mountains.
actually, I would like to give him credit for getting me into indie wrestling in 2003, showing me my first Ring of Honor in TNA back then. So what up, Zach? Zach texted me talking about Foley's last days in TNA. Mick Foley's last days in TNA. And how Foley had done a house show for TNA in Messina, New York. Small town.
That's where Zach's mom lives. By the way,
Yeah.
everyone. What's Zach's mom address?
Zach stands out there.
So Zach was working nearby the venue. I don't know if he actually even went to the show, but he heard about it. And apparently the show only drew 20 people.
Wow.
And Foley was so upset about this that was the last straw for him with TNA, and he quit.
You remember he tweeted something about like a show on Impact, where he's like, "This match reminds me of the empty arena match I had with The Rock," and he got in trouble with the TNA management because he was just saying nobody comes to our shows, and they like mutually agreed this is over. TNA was awful. They're doing a TNA revival show WrestleMania weekend. One of the over 100 shows happening a satellite to WrestleMania is going to be TNA. Impact presents TNA, and I don't know who they're going to get.
It's too soon, guys.
Everybody that was good, the WWE snapped up.
Yeah,
right.
Like what are they? Like a biz, even
it's just
going to
be Jeff Jarrett for 3 hours.
No, Jeff Jarrett works for the WWE. He works backstage.
Oh, that's right. They made up and everything's good. And he was in the Royal Rumble last year.
Yeah, all of the good wrestlers are wrestling for the WWE, and all of the other guys that were good are working as agents.
Or as Lillian Garcia pronounces it, Royal Wumbo.
Oh yeah, that was an embarrassing moment.
She botched twice in that opening. She said Royal Wumbo, and then at one point, I wrote it down. She says, "Give me just a second."
Well, so to explain to listeners, we did an unusual thing for the minisode in that we did watch something specifically for this minisode. I learned that the 2006 Royal Rumble was a Rey Mysterio-centric Rumble. That was literally all I knew. And I said, you guys had me watch all these other fucking Rumbles. Like, I love Rey Mysterio. Let's watch that one. I'm going to insist that we watch that one.
He's in the match the whole time. He wins it.
Not much else happens.
Well, that's the thing. I really learned something doing this, which is that you can have a long main event match that is built around a wrestler that you like, and in which that wrestler can win, and it can still be a boring, stupid thing to watch that you feel like it's kind of a waste of
I
time.
mean, for one thing, we didn't tell you that Triple H was also in the
No.
match the entire time.
No,
Entire
you did
time.
not.
No, we withheld it from you as a prank.
I forgot.
Okay, so speaking,
I didn't really remember very much from that Rumble at all, which is why
Yeah.
we didn't choose it for one of our
yeah.
episodes.
So speaking of awful, by the way, the choice Lillian Garcia quotes, I found them in the order of the number that they drew, and the last man standing will be the winner of the Royal Rumble. So Ben, how do you feel about
Okay,
Lillian
Lillian
Garcia?
Garcia is the worst ring announcer on a major stage ever. I never liked Lillian Garcia very much as a ring announcer. I'm sure she's a fine person.
I thought she got good for a couple years towards the end, but they had her for like 15 years.
They mostly had her to sing the national anthem.
She's good at that.
She was very good at
They
that.
still haven't replaced her technically. Now they just play when you go to a live show, they play a recording of Lillian Garcia singing the national anthem.
I do want to say from the 2018 Women's Royal Rumble, Maria Menounos does the introductions, and she doesn't do a great job. She's not a ring announcer by profession, but I want to say I really like Maria Menounos. I don't know what TV show is she from?
I have no clue.
Entertainment Tonight, or
I don't
It
know.
might be
tell you.
Entertainment
do they still
Tonight,
have
something
Entertainment
like that.
Tonight?
Something disgustingly mainstream.
But whatever it is, whenever she does wrestling stuff, she's great.
Well,
she seems to really like it.
She loves wrestling. She's a huge fan.
Go look up her doing Dusty Rhodes' Hard Times promo. She does it excellently. And she actually had a WrestleMania match that was pretty good.
Yeah.
As great as she was, something that was extremely extra not great about the 2006 Rumble is the character of Horny Vince, who is all over the pre-show number selecting scenes.
yeah, right.
Here we go. Here's my Candice rant. Is everybody ready for it? And how much I hated Candice Michelle and how she was a representation of everything that was wrong with the women's division in that era.
Is she one of the women that Vince is
She's
sexually
the-
harassing in this
she's-
documentary
she's-
footage of how he
yes.
actually treats his employees?
Yes.
She's the one that's the most excited to be harassed. She's the one who's constantly up front, like rubbing the,
Oh,
the
okay,
balls,
yes.
like in her boobs, and like flashes
Yeah.
Vince her boob to show him a tattoo. She's that one.
I felt especially bad for Victoria in those segments
Me
because
too.
she's
Yes.
actually a fantastic wrestler.
Victoria, the girl who stood in the back for the most part and didn't get harassed much except to show her very, very fake stick-on divas tattoo.
Oh, right,
At one
yes.
point, she's actually probably one of the best women's
Oh,
wrestlers of all time.
I'm sure everybody there is much better than this, than that.
No,
than
Candice
they just
isn't.
like,
Yeah,
no,
not
she's
Candice.
not. No, okay.
Candice,
Let's hear the rant.
Tori Wilson maybe
Yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit
So,
better.
Yeah.
so Candice was a girl that didn't even qualify for the final 10 of the original Diva search, but was hired anyway, based on looks, because they were only hiring 10s at the time, because they didn't care about women's wrestling. They cared about getting a girl in Playboy every year. Only hire girls that look like they could be in Playboy. Candice, before she was a WWE star, straight up, this is not even being insulting. I have nothing against it as a profession. Did softcore porn, like Skinamax, like HBO in the middle of the night, like no actual
Sure.
penetration. You don't see any actual private parts, smacking boobies everywhere, like the kind of porn you watch when you're 12, and it's all you can find.
A lot of the promise of David Duchovny's penis, but you don't actually ever get to see it.
Exactly.
He was in the Red Shoe
exactly.
Diaries
No, lower
in the
down than
80s,
that.
yeah.
Hers was the stuff that was actually presented as like middle of the night Skinamax
Okay.
porn, like she was in like Skinamax stuff. And so when she got hired, it wasn't much of a stretch for her to like do that porny shit.
She did really well with that GoDaddy commercial on the Super Bowl.
Right, that too. Yeah. She was the GoDaddy mascot or whatever the hell you call it. So she did this stupid dance. It
Whatever
literally
GoDaddy was.
Yeah, it was a web hosting company. I think it still is.
They're one of the biggest web hosting
Yeah.
companies in
Yeah.
the world. They just got a catchy name.
Dude, she would do this dance that wasn't even really a dance. It was just her spinning around with her hand over her head, shaking her ass. It was a dance that any hot woman with any sort of mild coordination, not me, I have no coordination. That's why I ref and don't wrestle. But it was a woman with any sort of mild coordination could do it. There was literally nothing special about it. So she comes to the WWE and like, here's the thing about the porny shit. I have nothing against the porn. I have nothing like, but I don't want it in my wrestling.
Well,
yeah, porn doesn't mix well with other things. It kind
Yeah.
of needs to be its own dimension.
The worst
Like,
thing about it was, they brought her in to look hot, and then they gave her the Divas Championship, and she was the focus of the women's division.
It was terrible because it was this. The other thing about that was
beating
like,
people like Beth Phoenix.
Yes, she beat Beth Phoenix for the title, and I didn't even get a chance to be truly mad about it back when it happened because that was the day Chris Benoit didn't show up for work.
Oh dear.
Oh.
But no, the other
That
thing
is the
about her,
second worst
the
thing
other,
that happened
the other
that
thing
day.
about her is everyone wants to pretend that she got pushed because she got good, but no, she got pushed because she did all this stuff that Vince liked, all the weird porn stuff that Vince liked to put on TV, and because she did Playboy that year. And the thing is, everyone's like, oh, she got better. I mean, yeah, she got better in the sense that she stopped being actively dangerous, and learned to do some wrestling, but she never got good. I mean, there were girls that were worse than her in the ring. One of them's on this pay-per-view. Rest her soul. Ashley Massaro's probably a very nice woman. Never got it.
I also want to mention on that note, Kelly. I don't know if we really talked that much about her on the premium episode where we did the 2007 Rumble that she was in. So her whole gimmick, this was when they brought back ECW, was that she was 19 and an exhibitionist.
Yeah, she would come out and start stripping, and then as soon as she was about to take off something that would get them kicked off of television, her big mean boyfriend would come in with a towel and wrap it around her and escort her off stage to the boos of all the horny guys. In the
That's
audience.
where they were in 2007.
Yeah, and just to finish my Candice rant in regards to when they gave her the title because, she was hot and had improved a little, it really started that trend. She was the one who started that trend, and it was so downhill from there with the quality of their champions because she started this trend that if a girl got a little better, we may as well just give her the title because the standard's so low. I'm like, the only reason she got away with that excuse at the time was that's how low the standard was. Candice Michelle is one of the worst women's champions of all time.
I don't
as far as quality goes.
I don't want to imply when she came back from injury with that big, hey, she's dedicated with coming back from that injury push, that Beth Phoenix purposefully injured her badly enough to end her career. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Maybe this is a perspective that I only have because I grew up post-internet, right? Maybe this is only because I've had access to internet pornography since I was a teenager, but I don't need other stuff to be horny. I don't need obviously if I'm watching a TV drama about people, people, sure, there might be a scene where there might be a sex scene because you're telling a story about humans, but I don't need my wrestling or my video games or anything. I don't need any of that to be horny. I feel like I compartmentalize. Is that weird?
No.
Or is this a generational thing?
Let me tell you the extent that they didn't get it. One time in that ECW revival, they were pushing it really hard. It's next week we're gonna have the Vixens, because they didn't want to call the ECW wrestlers superstars and divas. They called them extremists and vixens. Wow.
Funny. That is actually also how we classify ISIS fighters of different genders.
Just a couple more things to add on the Candice thing. The reason it affected me, and is still such a thing in my brain, is the entire time this was happening, I was about an 18, 19-year-old girl that wanted to seriously get into wrestling as a performer, and I didn't want I wanted role models. I wanted someone that I could actually root for. Thankfully, Beth Phoenix came along. And there had been girls before like Victoria and Molly Holly and girls that could really go. And but it was the television telling me that this was the only thing I could ever aspire to, is I would only ever get on the show if I looked like this and did all this, and it was such she really was just objectification. She wasn't ever really a character. She was an object. Her character was
round objects.
She was her character was sexy girl who might blow you. Yeah. There was literally a DX segment where they insinuated that she blew them. Remember, it was at a barbecue.
Just Triple H. Shawn Michaels ran off.
Oh, right, because he's
Christian,
and married and Christian. Yes.
I mean, that kind of shit. This podcast would not exist
Yeah.
if it wasn't for the fact that that was my entire conception of how wrestling treated women. And it seems like that was the deal
It
until
was.
like
It was.
the mid-teens.
AJ Lee,
like
man.
AJ Lee,
It's,
yeah.
it's the women's revolution, as they put it, and really that's only when the super mainstream started picking it up. But it's very recent.
Yeah.
That shit has
It's
been
incredibly last 5 years.
It's
or
been
so.
changing quickly, which is good, but it's incredibly recent.
Yeah, get ready for our forthcoming AJ Lee episode in a
And
couple
and
weeks.
just to finish it off, yes, Beth Phoenix did basically retire Candice Michelle from in-ring competition. She tried to go to TNA. The Kevin Nash was
It's a
having
broken
that
clavicle, right?
something like
Oh
that.
my!
Kevin-
Oh, that sounds like an unpleasant
yeah.
bone to
Kevin,
break.
do you remember? Does anyone remember Kevin Nash was having that like valet contest where he was looking for a hot girl to like
Yeah.
give money to? The payoff for that was actually supposed to be Candice Michelle coming to TNA. Instead, she got pregnant. Good for her.
All right, good.
So
Yeah,
she
so it
she
doesn't-
pulled out.
Right, what I was gonna say with what you were saying about how you don't need like your everything else just to make you horny, and the level that they were missing the point of like what's sexy on television and what isn't. In this ECW, they were advertising heavily that like next week the ECW Vixens are going to have a strip poker match, right? So the next week, it wasn't like a segment. It was like overarching the whole show between segments. There'd be like a room. Balls Mahoney was the dealer, and there were like 5 women, or like they're playing strip poker, and they're all drinking, except Kelly, who's just like, I'm 19, I'll have some water. And so they would cut in like split screen whenever one of the women had to take a piece of clothing off. And on the other side of the screen would be like the extremists wrestling. So on half the screen, you'd see Tommy Dreamer bleeding while the Sandman was hitting him. Well, this is WWE CW, so you'd see Bob Holly bleeding while Test was kicking him. And on the other half of the screen, you'd see Kelly taking her shirt off. And it's like, is this supposed to titillate me?
Yeah, who
is this
is
like,
this
what
for?
is this? Yeah, what are you doing?
Like even like you know. Even like the cheesecake matches, like I'm
Yeah.
watching, like is the expectation, like am I supposed to jerk off to this and then just ignore it if they cut to JR for a sec?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
Also, you feel creepy watching it because they keep saying how she's like only 18 years old or 19 years old, and you're like, oh, so she's barely out of high school. This is weird.
Well, that wasn't too weird for. I mean, most porn has been directed at that kind of.
We were also only in our early 20s.
We were
ourselves
right.
At the time.
It's different
You
looking
know.
at porn with like 18, 19-year-old girls when you're in your early 20s.
Well,
the older you get, the
now
creepier it is.
rewatching the Kelly stuff, isn't it a little more creepy looking at
Oh,
her? And she's
certainly.
clearly barely not a child.
But I remember Barely Legal being one of the most popular porn magazines.
Yes, of course.
Anyway, let's get back to the Rumble.
yeah,
for
all
a
right.
minute.
So back to the Rumble.
Wait.
You
One
would-
more thing
yeah.
on misogyny and such.
All right.
We were talking about Macho Man Randy Savage, and you were asking, like what the gimmick really was, and we sort of downplayed the whole macho part of it.
Yeah.
But really, especially his early days in WWF, the fact that he was an overbearing husband to Elizabeth and was controlling her and, super crazy jealous and toxically masculine in a bunch of ways was a big part of his character.
Oh,
for a while,
okay.
Yeah,
All right,
when
yeah.
he was a heel.
The two of them were a package deal. It was the nice, quiet, friendly woman and the big, bad, in-your-face man, and together those ingredients made for very compelling television.
America.
I mean,
Yeah.
Miss Elizabeth may very well be the best valet of all time.
Oh yes. I
As
would.
a pure valet. Yeah.
As a pure
Yes,
valet.
as what a valet should be.
Oh, she never wrestled a match, and maybe once in WCW under heavy duress.
The only other woman I can think of in modern wrestling since then that I thought really knew what she was supposed to be doing as a valet was Charmel during the King Booker stuff.
Yeah.
What
Oh, yeah,
about?
that was great.
I mean, there was Sonny.
Right, Sonny as
Sonny
well.
was a manager.
She was a true manager.
Sonny
You're
was
right.
real.
You're right.
Sonny, it was very hard for her to stick around long enough in any certain
Yeah.
gimmick, though, because of her problems.
Yes.
Yes, well, she is in jail.
Oh yeah, she's in jail.
She is in jail.
For what?
Multiple DUIs. I think.
You can't do that. That's not
No,
good.
No.
Anyway, you were talking
yes.
about horny Vince last.
I am all for breaking the law, but not when it endangers other people.
Right.
Break the dumb laws.
Jump the turnstiles,
Yeah,
kids.
smoke weed, pee on cops, like that kind of stuff. All right, yeah. So here, my other random thoughts. I mean, really, what this Rumble was a solid 10-minute match at the beginning. a solid 10-minute match at the end, and a lot of whole fucking boring bullshit in the middle. I think what happened was when I heard the phrase like Rey is in it the whole time, I was imagining Rey Mysterio is going to do in 2006 what Ric Flair did in 1992, where he's going to be wrestling the entire time. Everybody's going to take their, everybody's going to come at Rey Mysterio, and he's going to do some crazy stuff and get around it and take them down in his way. And that is not what happened. Rey Mysterio is doing the thing where he's either lying on the floor writhing, or they're having like the Royal Rumble break where like 6 guys try to lift one guy out of the ring, but it's really he's just sort of having to lie down on the ropes while everyone else gets to like pretend.
It was cool getting to see Mysterio and Psychosis.
Yes.
Who's one of their matches we covered in a premium episode. Get in there, and they had a cool little...
I wish any of the announcers had mentioned their history.
Yeah.
I think Jerry Lawler was just like, Psychosis.
The crowd knew who Psychosis was. They chanted
course.
ECW when he came out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's 2 of the greatest rivals in 90s wrestling. That pissed me off. It's like, oh, Ray and Psychosis, they're gonna... Oh, that's right. They don't respect Psychosis.
There are a lot of great moments of people using Ray to hit other people with. So like I'll love it when a guy hits a guy with another guy. That's why that's why we're here in the first place.
Yo, Carlito hangs in there for like a solid 30 minutes too.
Yeah.
This was when they were still behind Carlito.
At one point, one of the announcers says of Carlito, he laughs at the misfortune of others.
He does, yeah. That's part of his gimmick.
And he spits in the face of people who don't want to be cool.
Oh, right. Yes, you mentioned that.
That was his kind of too long catchphrase. His original name in full was Carlito Caribbean Cool. And then they dropped most of it because it was too long.
I will say, by a massive coincidence, I spent this weekend in a long car ride with Doc's old tag team partner, who was extremely excited that he can now talk to me about wrestling.
I'm sure he went on and on and on.
And
on
yes.
and on and on.
Oh, yes. We love you, Simon. Who's one of the few people who actually is probably going to listen to this episode as of now.
Hi, Simon. What's Simon's address again, Evan?
But he, over the course of the conversation we were having, he described Eugene to me, and then Eugene popped up in this, and that is the extent to which we will ever discuss Eugene on this podcast.
Man.
Oh no! Now we have to talk about.
No,
Eugene.
I don't want. I don't want to. I don't.
We're gonna watch his match with Triple
all I will-
H.
Oh, I no.
I will. All I'm gonna say is it's actually. I won't talk about the gimmick because I get that it upsets you, Evan. But it's actually more offensive if you knew who Nick Dinsmore was.
Fantastic wrestler.
Incredible.
Great
He was an
technical
incredible wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean I get why they thought that. No, this is what I wanted to avoid. Okay, moving on. I'm sure we'll do an episode on like problematic characters in the future.
Oh, we'll do a Wrestle
like
Crap
that.
episode.
Randy Orton is an alleged killer.
The legend killer.
Legend killer.
Legend killer.
So his gimmick at the
I was like, oh my god, should he be here wrestling? Is that morally acceptable?
I mean, his gimmick at the time basically was that of he was going after specifically the old men, just so he could say that he ended the careers of legends. Yeah,
they kept booking Superfly for years after he was an alleged
right,
killer.
and he totally killed that girl.
He totally killed that girl.
Randy Orton does fascinate me as a heel because I have seen, I guess like early Randy Orton and late Randy Orton. Early Randy Orton reminds me of a very specific person I know who I don't like, which apparently is his deal. Everybody has some specific person they know that they hate that Randy Orton reminds them of. And current Randy Orton looks like an actual inhuman monster. So that's
one day we'll watch Mick Foley carve rivets of gore into his virgin flesh.
I really want to watch that.
So
That's a good one.
So early Orton reminds me of a drunk NYU kid.
Yeah, that's kind of describes the person I'm thinking of.
And late Orton is literally like an iguana.
Yeah.
Like drippy iguana.
He's just been sitting in the sun every day for the last 20 years.
It's weird to watch a guy go from like a really good-looking guy to like a weird creature beast, like
drippy iguana.
Yeah, who I guess still has nice abs, but
Sure.
He married a fan.
Yeah.
He said, yeah,
His
he's mad.
wife was a fan. Yeah. Who
Oh
we
well,
met at a show.
good for her.
Good for her.
Seriously.
He's the kind of guy who I feel like you can tell that's how I want to base a relationship on adoration of fucking me.
He did an interview a couple of years ago saying that like if he ever like retires before he gets too old, it's like one of the biggest difficulties he has constantly being a WWE superstar is just maintaining his abs. He's like, I'm almost 40 and I have to keep these abs. Everything I eat, I have to be so careful and I got to do all this. It's getting tiresome.
And he looks like he has a way lower body fat percentage now than ever.
Well, back in the day before the wellness policy, he was just another big guy. And now it's like he tries to keep shredded because that's the way he looks impressive.
Oh yeah, but being shredded takes such an. The more I learn about fitness, the more now when I see people who are shredded, I'm like, oh man, are you okay?
Yeah.
Like, are you? Because
Do you need some water?
Because something I know about you is that you have an unhealthy relationship with food, or you're a genetic super being. Like some people just fucking are like that. But for the most part, like if you're that shredded, man.
You just have to eat and 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 never stop eating. And it's all has to be like fish.
Yeah, well, that's
never a carb.
It's all unseasoned chicken breast and steamed broccoli. That seems like
The Rock said it's cod, mostly cod.
He also says he hates cod, but he eats pounds of cod every day. Look up the Evan.
Just
You
be
should
fat.
and everyone
Just
else.
be a fat guy.
Look up The Rock's diet one day.
Oh,
the sheer amount that he
And,
eats.
and
I
look
follow-
up his cheat days.
I follow The Rock on Instagram, and I'm familiar with all of it.
All right.
B, I submit to the theory posed by Adam Johnson of the Great Citations Needed podcast that The Rock does not actually have cheat days because he is not a guy who can, like, shut it off for any period of time. He just has them because it's good for the social image of the social media enterprise that is The Rock
Then he
to
throws the
appear
food
to
out.
be a human.
Well,
yeah.
I also
he
like
probably donates it. I mean, I'm sure he's a decent
Yeah,
guy.
The Rock.
Yeah.
He probably has a set of homeless people offset when he's shooting the cheat days that come and eat the food after he's done.
Well, there's on a serious note about that, there's a purpose to the cheat days, too. Like, the last one that I saw, and I don't follow him that closely on social media, but I remember a few months ago he posted, like, 2 large pizzas, and the caption is like, man, I love it when my nutritionist says, okay, today's the day for you to eat 2 large pizzas, because we need you to have that much carbs and fat in your system so that over the next couple of weeks we can use it. And that's what bulking is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
He
also supercharges your metabolism when you have a cheat day.
If you do it judiciously and properly like that.
I had a cheat day yesterday. I feel bad.
Yeah, yesterday I went to Cracker Barrel because we were driving down from Massachusetts. We were driving down from Boston to New York, and there was a Cracker Barrel on the way. And man, that shit is not good for you and extremely, extremely delicious. The only other points I really have, sexy Viscera, much less threatening than horny Vince.
Yes.
Would take it any day of the
Despite
week.
the actual sexual assault in the middle of the ring.
Yes.
Very overt. There's
Matt
one
Hardy.
point where Triple H pushes a guy off the top rope, and one of the announcers goes, "There's the cerebral assassin," and I was like, he pushed a guy. He pushed a man, and it's a wrestling match. That's not. I don't think that's necessarily an expression of being the cerebral assassin.
You still haven't seen anything particularly cerebral assassin-like that Triple H has done, have you?
I think there was a match where you explained some sort of scheming had happened in the background. I don't know.
It gets to be kind of subtle.
Yeah.
Is the thing. That's like the cerebral assassin, as
It
opposed
was
to
really-
like Steve Austin, which was the comes up to you and beats your ass assassin.
Well, speaking of Steve Austin, it was really all just about the whole thing where he got hit by the car. And it turned out to be Rikishi, who Triple H had convinced to do it for The Rock.
Yes.
For the people.
And that was, that took some
Yeah, that was stupid.
mental something.
I don't know how Shawn Michaels has so much energy. It's just amazing. He just comes out and he's just so
hopping down to the ring.
Yeah.
Like Super Mario, just like jumping up and down.
I don't know how Sylvan Griner can kill a crowd so hard.
Oh my God! Everyone just got real quiet for a second when he came out.
His theme played, and it's like it was like I was like, did they mute the crowd noise? No, just literally nobody cares.
All those La Resistance guys were just total heat killers.
Yeah,
Rob Conway would come out with his really terrible theme music.
Yeah, Rene Dupree made out the best of them as far as being a wrestler long term once he got out of the WWE. But he was also the youngest of them.
What has he done?
He went to he had a pretty decent career over in Japan, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Not like a big one or anything, but like he kept going after they let him off and did other stuff. Whereas Sylvan Griner, I think just now is resurfacing in apparently some sort of backstage role in WWE. And Rob Conway has fell off the face of the earth into the Springfield mystery spot.
I mean, a few years ago, Rob Conway was like the NWA champion at the absolute lowest point of the NWA championship. Before the whole Tim Storm saga started up.
Right.
Oh no, just my last real note is
fucking
love the Shane dance.
Yeah.
The Shane, it's such a twerpy little he manages to simultaneously insult you and himself while he's doing it. Oh,
it's Rocky Johnson's dance, who passed away this past week.
Oh, wow.
Rock's dad.
R.I.P. Rocky Johnson. You know?
Well, I bet it looked cool when he did it.
Yeah, well,
I
think he gave it to Shane with permission, right?
When Shane was a teenager, he specifically asked Rocky Johnson, "Hey, can you show me how to do the dance?" And he was like, "Sure, kid," because he knew Shane since Shane was a little kid. He showed him how to do the dance, and then it was just a thing that he. Man, can you imagine being in high school with Shane McMahon and his stupid buddies, and I don't know, they're beating you up or something, and he's doing this stupid dance.
Oh,
yeah,
that
baby,
definitely happened.
I got you.
Oh, there's some poor kid who was the son of a kitchen worker in the WWE cafeteria who who Shane absolutely tortured, and then later accidentally murdered, and Vince had to cover the whole thing up.
That's why Shane went to China for a few years to lay low, right?
Boom.
And that makes Vince a better dad than Hogan, because Hogan didn't cover up Nick's accidental murder.
I do want to also. Yeah. Wait, what?
Oh yeah, I had totally forgotten about that.
That's it's very
very sad.
The kid did die eventually, right?
He did.
Yeah.
I mean, he in essence died that day.
Right. No, he was in a coma.
It's
that
a
whole
very
time,
sad
right?
story.
Hulk Hogan's son, and he was a young adult. I think. How old was he? 21 or 22?
Yeah, he was young.
He was young, but he wasn't a child. And him and one of his friends got in a car, and they were really drunk, and he crashed the car, and his friend was in a coma for years and eventually died. There was a lot of legal action back and forth.
He wasn't in a coma. He was brain dead.
And it was it was pretty clear that Hogan had bought them the booze and stuff.
Right.
And
Whatever, kids. Here you go. If you're gonna buy your underage kids booze, I think isn't the whole point as long as you're staying in my house, I can protect you, right? Not here, kids, get loaded in the car.
Yeah, but that seems like ludicrously egregious, right?
I mean, and regardless of whether he bought the booze or not, the Hogans definitely lawyered up really hard in order to avoid any kind of liability and pay this poor kid's family any money for that shit.
Mostly need to keep Nick out of actual jail.
Right? Yeah, that too.
Because technically he was pretty guilty of manslaughter, but they lawyered up so hard. I think they mostly paid the family out, right?
Did they? Okay.
I don't know. We could look it up. That's I'm not too interested in digging about this kind of thing. It's a horrible situation.
Well, what I was gonna say feels a lot less appropriate now.
No, bring it back.
I'll still just point out that at the beginning of the match when they're pulling the numbers and Horny Vince is there, Triple H does simultaneous creep and self-own when he asks one of the ladies, "Hey, can you hold my ball?" So it's both gross and also implies that he has one ball.
Oh, man. Triple H does that kind of thing sometimes. One time in full Attitude Era, he was sitting in on commentary and he was full DX Triple H, just trying to be snot rude. And I can't even remember what he was referencing, but he just goes, I think one of the Mexican wrestlers was in the ring, and he just goes, "I'm by a lot of things, but lingual isn't one of them." And they kind of let that hang there for a second. He goes,
"Yep."
Wait, and then Jim Ross is like, "No, you said it," and then they just keep going forward.
Yeah, I mean, Triple H is willing to, have a joke at his own expense. That's
I would
something
hope
you can
so.
say.
If we're gonna purposefully show you another Triple H match for the sake of a Triple H match, we should show you the hog pen match, where he gets dumped into a giant pile of pig shit and pigs because they had a bunch of pigs in there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. That works.
I'm not saying we'll do that this week.
Yeah.
I'm saying at some point in the future we should do. Yeah.
Henry
do we-
Godwin spotlight episode.
Yes, yes.
Do we-
HOG.
I have a few notes
Yes.
from the Rumble episode. So number one, Nikolai Volkov was Croatian.
Croatia.
That
yeah.
was the Soviet satellite that
I was
he was from,
wondering. I should
Croatia.
not be ignorant on that. Thank you.
I had said that Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty had this interaction where they both punched each other a bunch. I had said that it was the 93 Rumble, but I believe it was the 94 Rumble. No, wait. You know what?
Well, I mean, the solution to this is we have to just watch all of them.
I don't know. Maybe, maybe cut that. Did they wrestle it? They made that a match in the 94
They
Rumble.
had a match at the 93 Rumble. It was
They had a match.
January
Okay, so I'm
93.
right. They had a match in the 93 Rumble. In the 94 Rumble, they meet during the Rumble and punch each other.
a bunch, yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Marty, I believe, had been fired and rehired at least once between all of that.
Last thing I want to talk about is Nia Jax, who we haven't seen in the WWE for a little while. I don't know if she's injured.
Oh, yeah. She had surgery on both her knees.
It's getting to be about
Ooh.
that time,
It
though,
is.
isn't it?
Yeah, it is getting to be about
Yeah.
that time for her to come back.
She's a really interesting case because she's really good. She's extremely promising as a character, as a wrestler. She has gotten a bit of a reputation for injuring people, though.
Yeah.
So
That's seems like pretty much the worst reputation you can have.
so
Yeah, it could be very stigmatizing in wrestling, even though, like, a lot of it has to do, in many cases, with just who's taking the move, too. It's very hard to really say who's at fault.
it did
a lot of
wonders
times.
for Becky Lynch because
it
in
made
that
her.
it totally made her in this one moment where Nia just punched her in the face and like broke her face. And bloodied her up and stuff, and Becky just kept fighting despite the fact that she was severely concussed.
They sold a lot of T-shirts with the picture of Becky's bloody face on it, being like, "Is that all you got?" And like Becky got
Yeah.
so over.
It made Becky as a badass, and it got Nia a lot of heat. Maybe
Right.
not the right kind of heat, but they certainly capitalized on it.
Oh yeah. Well, Vince is still like old school enough, and so is Triple H for that matter, to be like, "Well, let's just use it. Let's just
Yeah,
use
just
it.
go with it."
We're not supposed to hurt each other. I mean, we're supposed to try not to hurt each other, but if one of us hurts another one, like, let's just go with it. Let's all make some
Yeah.
money on it.
I keep thinking of Vince tearing both his quads climbing into the fucking ring, and then just like being like, and then still just telling people what's what and what to do.
And
Like,
everyone's confused why he's sitting there.
One last really big thing I want to talk about that we didn't mention in any of these Rumble episodes
Yeah.
is the fact that the vast majority of them, up until the last couple of years, were booked by one person,
Yeah.
Pat Patterson.
Hmm.
Great wrestler in his day, long time, close confidant, associate of Vince McMahon. And yeah, it was his job to book the Rumble every year. For better or worse, some of them really hit, some of them were great, others weren't as good. I think the last few years, Jamie Noble did one of them.
Oh yeah.
I think he did one of the really bad ones, unfortunately. I love Jamie Noble. But yeah, Patterson has delegated that out in recent years. But yeah, he is the architect of the Royal Rumble.
I wanted to
Traditionally.
say one more thing about this one we watched for the mini before we wrap up. I know it's like the mini-sode we need to wrap up. But one more thing to get kind of outraged about was Shelton Benjamin came out with the Shelton Benjamin's mama character.
Oh, boy. So
And
can
so
I?
that-
Oh, go ahead. You can tell this one.
Yeah,
Doc.
yeah, I'll tell this one. So the story was like Shelton Benjamin was a great athlete. He still is a great athlete and a great wrestler. But he didn't have the charisma to come across as a star. So they were going to start trying like gimmicks for him and all. And so they were like, well, how about your mother's with you and she's like overbearing and you're like, come on, mom. And then you're an athlete. I mean, that's not the worst idea I've ever heard. But the word is they were going to use his real mother, but they didn't because she didn't fit the character that Vince had in his mind. Because Vince's image in his mind of what a black woman is Tyler Perry as Medea.
Yeah, it seemed like a pretty. What is that, like a purposeful Medea riff? Because that
Yeah,
kind
oh,
of
absolutely.
yeah,
How
that
could it
seemed to
not
be
be?
what
And
it is. Yeah.
Like apparently Vince met his actual mother and she was like thin and well spoken and fully educated and he's
Right.
like no we need Tyler Perry's Medea. They hired an actress that was like already known a little bit on
Yeah.
TV. Thea Vidal, her name. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but that was her name.
Thea
She had
Vidal, yeah.
even had her own sitcom that ran for like a year on, like, I believe it was the WB or UPN back
Yeah.
in the day. And I mean, the series didn't work. They
So it's
decided.
very clear to a lot of people that this is not actually Shelton Benjamin's mom.
Yeah, they canceled her series and took the more successful, more over young actress that was on her series playing the daughter and gave her a show. And that girl was Brandy. And the show was Moesha.
Whoa.
big hit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Man, you really feel for black people that have worked for the McMahons.
You
So,
really
like,
do.
holy
Yeah,
sh-
absolutely.
I cannot fucking imagine being in the room and Vince pitching your character to you
Yeah.
and having to fucking just sit there and be like, sounds great, where's my check?
He's
like,
racist in a way where you don't, like, he doesn't know he's racist or think he is.
no, well, because from his perspective, he's like, oh, this is great, and then you're gonna make money, and I'm gonna make money, and we're all gonna be happy.
He's a boomer.
Yeah, big time.
He really is. He's
I-
right in the age range for it.
I could reference the New Day being on Chris Jericho's podcast if you want to actually hear the reactions of black wrestlers who have been pitched to by Vince McMahon. Also, the New Day
I would
has
like to
their
hear
own
that.
podcast now over the last few weeks, done through the WWE. I haven't listened to it yet. I hear it's very good. I should probably add it to my list of stuff.
The New Day are a really interesting phenomenon in their own right.
Yeah, that's another topic.
How they took a really bad Vince idea and turned it into gold.
And now they're untouchable. They've been the best thing in the WWE consistently for like 5 years now, something like that.
yeah.
6 years, 5 years.
Long enough.
Long enough, yeah.
Speaking of things that are not the best thing to ever be in the WWE, make sure you get ready for this Monday's episode in which we delve into the world of a man who cannot be seen, nor should he be seen.
I have a button on my phone that plays the John Cena theme. It's been delisted on the store, but yeah, I still have it.
And his name
As-
is John Cena.
That's right.
I have part of my soul that dies every time I hear the John Cena theme, because surprise, surprise, listeners, I don't care for him. This has been Contesting Wrestling Minisodes. You should follow us on Twitter @ContestingW. Send us your thoughts, your feelings, your criticisms, your corrections.
And don't interrupt Evan while he's making the outro.
And no matter what, don't do that. If you like us, you should check us out on Patreon, where you will get at least one bonus episode per week and more bonus content to come. That's patreon.com/contestingwrestling. This has been all of us. Thank you.